This is not just any city, it is the capital of Wei, one of the original 7 warring states, a metropolis that had stood for over 130 years, home to roughly 500,000 people, a hub of trade, ironworking, and military power. Its walls were reinforced over generations thick, tall, and solid enough to repel every Qin army that had come before it. For decades, Qin had battered at Wei's borders, but Daliang had never fallen. That is, until Wang Ben arrived. Let us step back to set the stage. By 225 BCE, Qin's Unification War was already well underway. 5 years earlier, Qin had annihilated South Korea, the weakest of the 6 eastern states. 2 years before that, Qin's elite troops, led by the legendary general Wang had crushed Zhao, capturing its king and reducing its territory to a rump state. Yan had overplayed its hand with the assassination attempt on King Zheng of Qin, later Qin Shi Huang, and paid the price with its capital sacked and its court fleeing to the distant Liaodong Peninsula. Chu, the massive southern state, was reeling from border raids and internal division. Only Wei stood firmly in Qin's path, blocking the heart of the Central Plains, the strategic crossroads that would let Qin march unopposed toward Chu and Qi. Wei was a shadow of its former self. Once the dominant power of the warring states era, it had been bled dry by decades of war, diplomatic betrayal, and territorial losses. But it still held one unbeatable asset, Daliang. The city was built on a flat plain, surrounded by the Yellow River to the north, and the man-made Honggo Canal to the east waterways that had made it rich, but also hid a death sentence. Its defenders knew the walls were strong. They had stockpiled grain for years, enough to outlast a long siege. They believed they could wait Qin out, just as they had done for generations. Wang Ben, the son of Wang Jian, and one of Qin's most brilliant and ruthless commanders, understood this better than anyone. He did not rush into a suicidal, frontal assault. His first move was to encircle Daliang completely, cutting off all supply lines, all messenger routes, all hope of outside aid. Wei had no allies left. Chu was too far and too weak. Qi had adopted a policy of neutrality, burying its head in the sand, while Qin devoured its neighbors. Daliang became a perfect island of resistance, trapped with no way in and no way out. For weeks, Wang Ben tested the city's defenses. His soldiers launched probing attacks, rolled out siege towers, loosed volleys of arrows, and tried to breach the gates with battering rams. Every assault was repelled. The Wei defenders poured boiling oil, dropped heavy stones, and fought with the desperation of people who knew surrender meant oblivion. Qing casualties mounted a traditional siege, would drag on for months, even years, draining Qin's manpower and delaying the unification plan. Wang Ben could not afford that. Then he looks at the land. Daliang sat in a natural basin, slightly higher in the northwest and sloping downward to the southeast. The Yellow River and Honggo Canal were just a short distance away. The solution was not brute force, it was hydraulics. This was not a random idea. Strategists like Su Dai and Lord Xinling had warned decades earlier that if Qin controlled the high ground near the river, it could flood Daliang and end Wei in one devastating blow. Wang Ben turned that ancient warning into a military reality. He ordered his entire army to abandon direct combat and begin a massive engineering project. Thousands of Qin soldiers and conscripted laborers dug long wide canals from the Yellow River and Honggo directly toward Daliang. They built earthen dikes and dams to control the flow, channeling millions of tons of river water into a single, unstoppable flood aimed at the city. The work went on day and night, no rest, no mercy. The people of Daliang watched from the walls, confused at first, then horrified as they realized what was happening. When the dams were opened, the water came, not as a trickle, but as a raging wall-like tide. It swallowed the moats first, then rose steadily against the base of the city walls. The defenders thought the thick earthen ramparts would hold. They were wrong. For 3 full months, the water did not recede. It seeped into every crack, softened the compacted earth, eroded the foundations, and weakened the structure from within. The walls began to sag, then crack, then crumble. Inside Daliang, the nightmare unfolded. Streets turned into canals. Homes flooded, grain stores rotted. Clean water vanished, disease spread like wildfire. Starvation set in. Historical records hint at unspeakable suffering, people trapped in attics on rooftops, clinging to any dry spot they could find. The once prosperous capital became a drowning prison. The Wei army, which had fought so fiercely from the walls, could no longer stand on collapsing defenses. Morale shattered completely. After 3 months of inundation, the main walls of Daliang finally gave way. The water poured into the city, completing its destruction. King Jia of Wei had no choice left. He surrendered unconditionally, laying down his weapons and opening the gates to Wang Ben's troops. With that, the state of Wei, founded over 170 years earlier, a pillar of warring states politics, ceased to exist. Wang Ben executed King Jia, eliminated remaining resistance, and organized Wei's territory into Qing commanderies, Dang commandery, and Sishui commandery, bringing the entire Central Plains under direct Qin rule. We cannot overstate the historical weight of this moment. Destroying Wei did more than eliminate one enemy state. It completed Qin's conquest of the three Jins, Hanzhou and Wei, the former states, carved from the old Jin state that controlled the Central Plains. With Wei gone, Qin held the strategic high ground of ancient China. It separated Chu in the south from Qi in the east, making any coordinated resistance impossible. The unification process, which had begun in 230 BCE, was now irreversible. Every remaining state would fall one by one: Chu in 223 BCE, Yan's remnants in 222 BCE, and Qi, without a fight, in 221 BCE. The flooding of Daliang also reveals a brutal truth about Qin's war machine. It was not just stronger, but smarter. Qin did not just rely on soldiers and weapons. It used terrain engineering and psychological warfare to break enemies without wasting countless lives in pointless assaults. This was total war, ancient style, cold, calculated, and unforgiving. It shows how a single strategic decision, based on geography and engineering, could end a centuries-old state in months. But we must also remember the human cost. This was not a clean victory. Tens of thousands of civilians died in the flood, from drowning, starvation, and disease. Daliang, one of the greatest cities of its age, was left in ruins. Its prosperity, its culture, its people, all sacrificed on the altar of Qin's imperial ambition. This is the dark underbelly of unification. The creation of China's first unified empire came with unspeakable suffering, a lesson that echoes through every era of imperial conquest. What makes this event so compelling is its blend of military genius and moral darkness. Wang Ben was a tactical genius, executing one of the most effective siege operations in ancient history. Yet his tactic was one of collective punishment, targeting an entire city to break a government. It forces us to confront a timeless question: at what cost do great empires rise? The flood of Daliang gives us a haunting answer etched in water and ruin. This event also reshaped our understanding of ancient Chinese warfare. Before sieges relied on starvation, assault, or betrayal, Qin turned water into a weapon of mass destruction, setting a precedent for siege tactics that would be used for centuries. It proved that control of nature, rivers, canals, terrain, could be just as powerful as control of armies. As we look back at 225 BCE, we see not just a battle, but a turning point. The fall of Wei was the moment Qin's victory became inevitable. The Warring States period, which had lasted for more than 250 years, was entering its final chapter. The flood that destroyed Daliang did not just drown a city. It drowned an entire era of independent states, clearing the way for the Qin dynasty, the first centralized imperial dynasty in Chinese history. Every time we study the unification of China, we tend to focus on Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, his terracotta army, his Great Wall, his legalist reforms. But we must not forget the quiet, brutal campaigns that made his reign possible. The flooding of Daliang was one such campaign, a forgotten masterpiece of destruction that laid the foundation for an empire. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient China, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more epic history. See you next time.